look what's happened. It's the Possibility Club podcast time. And you're here and I'm here. And that's ace. That's all we need. Let's shut away the rest of the world. It makes no sense. As you know, we're exploring through the Possibility Club podcast conversations the impact of COVID-19 and other 21st century traumas on UK life, particularly the worlds of business, culture and education. And I've had the privilege of talking to some of those working at the coalface. A special area of focus for me over a number of episodes has been the music industry, already a sector facing radical adaptation in a digital age, always treading a fine line between a public devoted to live music festivals and championing their favourite artists, with unsustainable business models, the death of record sales, and a pretty fragile future for many grassroots music venues. So when you throw in a global pandemic, then even the most fundamental recording, touring, creating and performing becomes a minefield, or banned, or unsafe. What on earth happens? We've spoken to Norman Cook about the club and festival circuit. We've talked to Meeta Raval about the state of opera. And Amy Lamé was pretty frank about the fragility and her concerns about the future of London's nighttime economy, facing lockdowns, curfews and collapse of income. We've got many more expert voices still to come who will help to unpick this complex and valuable world. But for today, I'm absolutely thrilled to say that my special guest is FIONA BEVAN. East Anglian FIONA BEVAN is both a singer-songwriter of her own folk-inspired music, and gorgeous it is as well, also being one of the UK's most prolific pop and rock songwriters for global acts as diverse as Kylie, Steps, Nick Mulvey, Lewis Capaldi, Aurora, Ed Harcourt, I love Ed Harcourt, and the Backstreet Boys, to name just a handful. FIONA is a contributor to a clutch of top 40 hit singles and albums, and is an acclaimed performer of her own work, but still probably best known by many for co-writing the song Little Things with Ed Sheeran. This song was released by One Direction in 2012, getting to number 1 in 13 countries with platinum certified sales in the UK, USA, Australia, Norway, Mexico and Canada, etc., winning a coveted BMI award for the songwriting. Not bad. I spoke to FIONA just before Christmas 2020 about the real lows of being a performer when you are banned from performing, and the highs of having a dizzyingly upbeat track included on one of the biggest selling albums of the year. And I asked her what she thinks needs to change as her beloved industry recovers from this unprecedented crisis. FIONA, how are you? Thank you so much for joining the Possibility Club podcast.
It's very lovely to be here. The sun's just gone down after quite a beautiful winter sunset. I'm in North London. It's pretty cold and I've been cranking up the heating. And there's a guitar lesson happening downstairs, which is Stairway to Heaven over and over. And I've got cats meowing, trying to get their dinner a bit too early.
We're talking on a Thursday where they've just announced all the pre-Christmas tiers.
Yeah, which everyone's rejoicing about really, but then actually everyone's still trying to do the strange jigsaw of where their family lives and what tier everyone else is in.
The Christmas conundrum of the 5 days.
Yeah, algorithms.
Who are you going to reject and at what cost? So we're going to be talking a little bit about the music industry, of which you have a very good insight. What happened to your world on the 13th of March? Or, we knew about this a couple of weeks before that, but when things started to look pretty ropey, what dawned on you at that point and how did that impact you then?
Well, it was a very extreme moment actually, because in the course of 1 or 2 days, every musician I know had their whole diaries wiped completely clean. I know a lot of musicians who make their whole living by playing live, 4 or 5 times a week all around the country or around Europe or whatever. So there was this sort of collective panic actually, and collective anxiety and stress from that, and huge stress and anxiety about money. Before the sort of universal credit thing was really, before that became clear, and like a lot of misinformation going around about the self-employed thing and who was eligible and stuff, an incredible amount of misinformation and huge panic.
Within that panic, though, was there a sense of a collective response? Did you presumably you talked to lots and lots of other people in the same kind of boat?
Yeah. So I suppose that was the only good thing about it, was that everybody literally in the whole world was in the same boat. And I think in a way that was an incredibly sort of binding experience, because suddenly, I mean, in our generation, we've never had something that has happened simultaneously to everyone across planet Earth, really. And I think some sort of, I don't know if you would call it wartime spirit or, but like something happened where at least people felt like they were in it together. Suddenly I've had this feeling from my neighborhood where, there was a WhatsApp group and people were delivering food to their elderly neighbors and checking on people, going to collect medicine for each other and stuff. And like, I've never felt a sense of community like that before. And that was really beautiful. And I think musicians did kind of band together. So, I mean, one of the things we did was we started live streaming. We'd never done any live streaming before. And we created a live stream theatre in the living room. We turned the whole living room into this crazy, beautiful, twinkly red velvet cavern. So I went into lockdown with a singer-songwriter called Adam Beattie and a cinematographer called Simon Minette. And
I was lucky.
Simon's got loads of like movie cameras and dolly tracks and, backdrops, theatre blacks and red.
Wow, why weren't we all in your house? That sounds awesome.
But then we sort of, we spent hours and hours like learning how to live stream. And when lockdown eased a bit, we had other musicians around to live stream as well, because a lot of people had tried it at home with their webcams and stuff and not really liked it very much. But we'd managed to create a really vibey environment to do it in, where you really felt connected to the audience and you could see their comments on your phone or on an iPad or whatever. And we did it so regularly that we had this bond that was created with the audience. So every Saturday night I would do it. Every Sunday night Adam Beattie did it. Wow. And actually people started to watch every single week. And a lot of them were on their own, completely isolated, actually all around the world. Like we had people tuning in from St. Petersburg, New Zealand, the Falkland Islands, Hebrides, America, just all over. And I think people started to find a lot of solace and community from tuning in together to this regular thing, like a little bit of routine. So that helped us through as well, like it really gave us something to work towards.
That's a pretty extraordinary sort of first reaction. I mean, that's great. I mean, I've spoken to lots and lots of artists and makers and creatives in different ways. It's kind of two camps. There are those that have done what you've done, and I think have certainly helped when they are kind of bubbling in a bit of a community already with other people.
Yeah.
Or those that just felt a brick wall, just sort of their creativity is right now is not here when I'm worrying how to keep a roof over my head.
If I'd been on my own, I don't think I would have been able to, I definitely wouldn't have been able to make a beautiful space like that. And I wouldn't have been able to sort of research all the technology and really work out how to do it to such a, because by the end of lockdown, we were streaming HD, multi-camera, basically we created like Jules Holland in our living room. Yeah. And, I would never have managed to do that on my own. So it is a collective, definite team activity. Yeah. And also just like in terms of morale, I don't think I would have had the energy and optimism to do that on my own. I think it really was like we kept each other going. And I think researching bit rates and HD and stuff really gave us like this big purpose. And also the reaction of the audience and their comments, because actually it was getting a lot of people through to watch our live streams every week. It was really helping them and their mental health and everything. And that really gave us a sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. So actually we were really, really together with a lot of people around the world, and it was pretty special. Yeah. And we even had a romance because like when you're watching the live stream, there's a little chat box and people comment, and the same people coming back every week. 2 people actually started kind of virtually dating each other across continent. So cute. I don't know the end of that story, but it's still
a good story. You need to find out.
Yeah, I need to find out.
What does post-traumatic growth mean to you? 2020 is the year in which everything changed. We're in a time of rethinking the very nature of work, society, culture, education and economics. But what does that mean for you and your projects? Hosted by Always Possible, the Possibility Club is a safe space to think aloud about what comes next. If you're interested in shaping your ideas and learning from others, we are your tribe. It's free to join. with access to a wide network of thinkers and doers. Sign up today and you'll also get 1 month free access to our expert circles with in-depth and targeted support on a range of professional development topics from fundraising to project design to marketing. Join in the conversation at thepossibilityclub.org. That's thepossibilityclub.org.
So a summer has been and gone where, some musicians could do some outdoor gigs. I know, pubs and bars were able to do something with very minimal crowds. But, how does it feel now compared to what you've just described in that sort of initial panic and, okay, we've got to do something to get through this?
This sort of second lockdown has been a very different atmosphere. And I think in a way, people are a lot more accepting of it and maybe a little more apathetic about fighting against it. I think people are waiting it out. People are almost writing off 2020 and just waiting for next year to make their dreams come true again, reignite their plans and things. But there's also been a lot of anger in the artistic community about the government's response. I mean, the darkest week was definitely when we were all told to go and retrain in cyber, whatever cyber is. Mm-hmm. And, since the Dominic Cummings thing, of course, the general public didn't respect the government guidelines anymore. So there's been this really odd feeling in the artistic community of like, we are not valued, we are not understood. Mm-hmm. Our workplaces aren't even mentioned in the guidelines. So we're having to just make it up as we go along. So, because we've now created this theatre that's like a workplace, we've had a couple of people to come and live stream, all at social distance measures and things like that with a one-way system and everything, because we're like, all our workplaces have been destroyed. And so now it's become kind of a political fight in a way to survive and continue and to prove that the arts are important. So it's become a bit more angry, I think, from where I stand and who I've been talking to. It's a very interesting shift. But for me, if it's anger that makes an artist manage to get out of depression and keep making their art, then great. If it's love, then great. If it's whatever it is, if it makes people keeping on, then wonderful. I don't want to live in a planet where there's no ballerinas or, grime artists, or we need it all.
Have you been surprised at all by your own reaction to this, whether it's anger or love or, the places it's taken you? Was that inevitable, or actually have you found has it rekindled a new connection perhaps with your art or with other people or with politics or, whatever it might be?
Yeah, it definitely has. And I mean, because I write songs for other artists and I've been doing a lot of that over the last few years. And then in the last couple of years, I've been doing a bit more of my music anyway. And then I think when lockdown happened, all the songwriting industry activity started happening on Zoom. And actually, unless you happened to really love writing in this virtual way, it's the most incredibly vibalist, difficult things, with some combinations of people through no fault of anybody's. It's just very odd. You can't play and sing together and it's so stilted and all that stuff. So I started doing a lot more just recording and writing for my album. And actually, I've been teaching myself to produce just so I can try and express what's in my head. Mm-hmm. And it's been coming on leaps and bounds really through lack of distraction. Nice. And absolutely zero FOMO. So it's like,
that's the thing, isn't it? That's the biggest.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
I'm not missing out on anything at all other than people at home having the same as I am.
Like everybody's in their pajamas.
You've been able to put more time into your own stuff. Sounds a cliche. It's a really awful question to ask a musician, and I hate that I'm about to ask it. But has there been something in your own voice, or kind of finding your own voice, particularly someone who writes for other people? Do you think that's something that's developed with you?
Yeah, and I suppose that has been a difficult thing for me since I started writing for others, and having to write songs in literally every genre and really express something for someone else, which is like you sort of leave your ego and your own taste choices at the door kind of thing. So it's been really amazing for me. I've never really done production for my own stuff. I've always been heavily involved in arrangement in every studio setting when I've been making a record, but this is me literally in front of the laptop, like trying to carve it out. And I suppose there's an infinite amount of choice, which is really problematic for me, but it really makes you have to make some tough decisions and be like, okay, what's it going to sound like, you know? And that's been an amazing thing to go through. And some of it is limited by your ability, but then you can do wonderful things. Any limitation you have can actually be such an incredible asset, because like a poet that I know called Martin Newell, who's a beautiful poet, he once said, you have to work out how to create beauty from within a cage. And the cage is whatever your limitations are, but there's great beauty within any kind of limitations. Anyway, that's a really long-winded way of saying.
No, but it's really important. Yeah, I mean, the scariest thing really for many people is a blank piece of paper, isn't it? Yeah. So having some guidelines on it, some things you can't do, some things it needs to look like a deadline, those things can actually be quite liberating. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So I've been surprised in that way. I've also been surprised by having to do a live stream gig every week, even when I really didn't feel like it. You know, there was a horrible couple of weeks when I lost people that I know to COVID, and then having to still do a gig at the weekend. And I did have moments like where I was playing live during the live stream, and I would just have a bit of a cry, and I'd be playing a song requested by someone bereaved, or like, you know, it was a very emotional time. And I suppose I surprised myself by the strength of the show must go on mentality. And I think I do understand all the musicians who felt like they were completely stopped dead in their tracks by COVID and didn't know how to carry on, and that sort of, and also the depression of that, you know, and every plan being cancelled. But I suppose my reaction maybe came from a fear of that stillness and quiet, and like, there was also a lot of manic activity online, which was quite off-putting for a lot of people. You know, every single artist you've ever seen is suddenly like posting and trying to get the attention. It was very, very odd. Everyone reacted differently, and there's no right or wrong way to react.
Yeah, probably a bit of catharsis in people seeing that bit of pain, actually, because other people are going through that at the moment. You know, this is a very sobering time. You've been doing some writing for yourself, which is great, but you mentioned that most of your career has been writing for other people. I'm less connected to the charts as I once perhaps was, but I do have young children. But it seems like, you know, the two flyaway albums of this year in this strange year, and I'm sure, you know, many others have been held back or not released, sort of, but it seems to be you're either Camp Dua Lipa or you're Camp Kylie. And you were very involved in at least one of those.
Yeah.
How does that feel to have actually contributed quite a lot to what's going to be kind of known forever as the sort of make you feel good in lockdown album?
Oh, you know? That's such a lovely thought. Thanks for that. That's so nice. Well, yeah, I mean, it feels amazing. Like, I wrote a lot on Zoom at the beginning of lockdown, and those sessions that did work were the ones with Troy Miller, who's a lovely friend and brilliant producer. He had this brief of, like, you know, disco, uplifting, and I was really, really up for it. And also we really wanted to do something in that sort of Quincy Jonesy kind of disco-y way, a bit like a 70s homage and stuff. And so it's really, really amazing that Unstoppable got onto the Kylie album. And it was very odd as well, because sometimes as the songwriter, you don't exactly know like the release date, or you're just crossing your fingers that it's going to be definitely on the record. And so I woke up a few weeks ago and it was like, oh, it's out today. Okay, great. I'm like so happy. You know, you as a songwriter, you sort of try not to count your chickens a bit too early or anything, you know, and when you actually see it online, you're like, okay, it's happening. And then a week later, when the album went to #1, it was like such a nice boost.
Oh, it's a banger. It's a great.
Yeah. And like, you know, I had so many nice messages from people like dancing in their kitchens and like really enjoying it. The whole album is incredibly high quality production, really super classy, like fun pop. So I think there's been a lot of kitchen dancing around the world.
That's the thing. I mean, you know, I've got plenty of time and space to watch Nick Cave on his own in a big hall singing sad songs. Don't get me wrong, but I've also got more than ever a need for some Kylie disco.
Yeah.
Right now, and
it was incredibly well timed, wasn't it? Yeah.
But in terms of the wider music industry, then, what are the implications? Is it just going to reset and get back to normal sometime next year, or is there some?
It's very troubling. I'm trying to stay positive because that's the only way I can operate in life, you know. But I mean, the live industry has taken such a deep hit. You know, a lot of our favourite venues have closed down, especially the little ones who I mean, some of them have now got some funding, but some of them closed 2 weeks before that funding got announced, and things, just devastating twists of fate. And I think it's been very hard. So I do worry about the sort of grassroots music industry of like local little venues.
I know we're going to be talking to Mark David as part of this series, who runs the Music Venues Trust, because they've
brilliant. Yeah, I mean, he'll
really
obviously have a lot to say about that. But like none of the musicians I know would have got to the level they've got to now if they hadn't started playing in some local venue. And actually, I really worry about what will happen if the grassroots level of things disappears. And I also, financially, I don't know if a 16 or 18-year-old songwriter or composer right now is going to go, yeah, this is a great career choice, I'm going to become a songwriter, because the COVID crisis has really revealed the problems with the financial side of the songwriting industry because of streaming, and the death of physical sales, really. I mean, now that there's no live income, no one's playing any stadiums, no songs are getting played in restaurants and bars. So the PRS side of music income is totally destroyed, and you're left just looking at your, digital streaming income royalties, and it's very scary. It's like, that's not...
I read a stat the other day. I think it's...
I really explained that badly.
No, not at all, not at all. But, it's something like 639 plays on Spotify before that song generates £1. Yeah. And that's £1 that's split between, obviously, everybody involved in it, which is often quite a lot of people. Yeah. And that's a lot of plays for £1.
Yeah.
On YouTube, it's even more, And
I suppose if you're one of those few huge artists, or if you're writing for them or producing for them, you're fine right now. But actually, I worry very much about, again, the grassroots level of songwriter coming up, because no one on earth can say to them that that's a great career to go into right now. And that's terrifying and desperately sad, really.
And you're going to get inequality, isn't it? It's going to be only those that are going to be able to be bankrolled by, the Bank of Mum and Dad or whatever, or some kind of other independent wealth, be able to consider it. And what a terrible narrowing of the talent pool is that?
Yeah, and of course, diversity is going to take a hit. And I suppose there's going to be a generation of kids coming up in every industry, actually, who are going to need a really big helping hand, because their exam results would have been kind of screwed over. Their studying probably got screwed over. And now there are no jobs for them to go into. And I think the implications of that for years to come are quite deep. And I think actually everybody is going to have to stop referring to kids as like hoodies and start really giving them a helping hand in every single industry. The sort of shadow might be quite long from COVID. And I'm an optimist and I'm a positive, like proactive doer, and I really want to see the world kind of get back on its feet. But I'm very open to things happening in a new way. I'm hoping that the green recovery could happen. I mean, it has to for all of our sake, it's inevitable that if we don't do something about the climate, then, and this is a perfect opportunity, we've all heard the birds singing while everyone stopped driving around, and
an owl in my garden. I live in a pretty built-up suburb. I've got an owl in the trees. Wouldn't have happened
That's amazing.
This time last year.
Yeah. So, I want things to change for the better. And actually, when everything's destroyed, it is a good opportunity for things to change. But it's going to take a lot of fight from a lot of us, and not being apathetic and not sitting back and waiting,
This podcast is brought to you by Always Possible. But who are we?
Always Possible is an energetic team with a proven track record of building ideas that work.
We use research, problem solving, design and storytelling to help transform society and to build businesses.
We give crucial support to organisations that care about the future.
From architects to aerospace companies, puppet theatres to primary schools, business networks to big data analysts.
Maybe you want to build your business in challenging times, or you want to build opportunities for communities. We help leaders work out what's next.
Find out more about how we could power up your mission. Visit alwayspossible.co.uk.
alwayspossible.co.uk.
Deep down, I'm excited about what this generation could do. They're going to need some help, but they're also going to need us to get out of the way.
That's
There's a
true.
really interesting book came out a couple of years ago called Be More Pirate, by a guy called Sam Conniff, and he says the only thing now that adults, let's say the over 25s, can do for this generation that owes us nothing, that has been left nothing, that has got very little to lose. Our job as adults is to give them a leg up and then get out of the way.
Yeah, I agree. That's very wise, and I definitely agree. And I'll do anything I can to help make that happen.
But I think the challenge is at its most enormous in the creative sector, as you say.
Yeah.
What do your contemporaries think? You'll be working with people that have all different kinds of roles within music. Are there people who have different views, or they're broadly people kind of sharing that sense of really don't know where this is going to go?
There's a lot of fear of the unknown, actually. Yeah. I think that fear can sometimes just stop you in your tracks. And I do think there's a lot of people just waiting and not really actively doing anything. I mean, they might secretly be writing their album and just waiting for things to go back to normal. But I can't see much activity on a grand scale of people trying to build that new normality. There can be a weird attitude in the music industry where people wait for someone to give them a record deal or a career of some kind or a prize or and actually, the longer you're in the game for, the more you realize you have to just build it and make it, and they will come, but no one really is going to give you anything. And I think this crisis has really proven that, I have sympathy for people who've been struggling, and because the mental health implications have just been absolutely huge in a sector where mental health is already a huge issue, actually, and people already feel like they're out in the wilderness all the time. It's a very odd industry, the music industry. Mm-hmm. But I think actually everybody pretty soon has got to start helping each other and helping sort of rebuild and rewriting the rules a little bit. I can't say exactly what it is. I mean, it's going to be really interesting. But I mean, I always have hope that we're going to do this. And I've already heard about a new venue that's going to be starting up next year, which is because of a benefactor who absolutely loves and wants to help support the scene. So there are going to be beautiful new things happening. And often it is through sort of charitable means and people just believing in the scene and wanting to support it and not wanting to see it die. So I think actually anyone who loves their local music venue or loves any artists, they need to really help not let it die. It's going to take a real collective, fans and musicians and venues and the government, hopefully. Yeah. And this is where out of a crisis green shoots can come, and they can look a bit different, and they can, dare I say it, sometimes be better than what was before. And I've been working with a theatre company that's they lost everything. They had 2 big touring shows, and they just collapsed overnight and went very, very deep into the red very quickly. They came up with a way of creating shows on Zoom that started quite rudimentary, but actually they've developed some really, really interesting ways of doing stories about confined spaces and about the way people talk to each other. And they've worked with now, Miriam Margolyes, and managed to get some really, really talented and interesting actors to kind of do things in a different way. That's not going to stop. That's now going to be such a significant part of their output, a new way of telling stories. And I think, what might a festival look like in a new reality? You talked about your kind of home theatre, which sounds awesome. But are there things that now, is there something better? Can you see something tangible that you'd carry on with, even though? Definitely. I mean, the live streaming, I don't think we'll ever stop now. I can't imagine us ever having a tour and not doing a live stream, because actually what it's been beautiful for is people in faraway countries where you're not going to go and tour there, they can still watch. They don't feel left out. Older people or people who can't make it to venues because of disabilities or young kids or caring for a family member or whatever, they can just watch the gig and they can feel involved. Or people who live far away and don't have public transport, so actually there's a really beautiful thing where a lot of people who don't normally make it to gigs can actually be part of the action. And that's been amazing. And that's been very, very special. I think live streaming is definitely not going to go away for us. But it's quite interesting, people have got a bit of screen fatigue and they want to come and have the camaraderie and the sort of chemistry of like being at an actual event. But as a second best thing, a live stream has been pretty amazing at like connecting everybody, making sure people don't feel left out. And it's kind of democratizing as long as you've got internet in some way.
This is a new income stream, isn't it? This is a new way for artists to connect with audiences around the world, but also to earn a living from it and to make some money. How do I ask people, would you mind putting in a $5 for that? Because now that's going to be my career.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right from the beginning, the way we did it was we did them for free on Facebook and Instagram, but we always had a little PayPal donation link so people could, if they had some money, because we were also really aware that a lot of people had lost their jobs or were in dire financial situations. So we always made it kind of pay what you can. And the more we carried on, we started to realize that it was the same people paying every time, but lots of other people still watching. So I suppose in the end, we made it a bit more exclusive, and all the people who paid, we gave them a secret link and just did a gig, like a paid ticket link. And that's quite interesting because it means the people who've paid really want to be there and they stay for the whole thing. They're not just dipping in and out, they're kind of committing. And it's like a beautiful gig venue where there's no talking at the back, like everyone's really there for the music and they'll have a chat to you at the merch desk after. So we created that vibe for those people. And I think, we still have done odd free things on Facebook. But I think it's important for artists to not give it away for free. I mean, okay, yeah, sometimes, or as a promotional thing, or, or when you feel like it, okay, fine. But actually, in every other area of music, the value of the music has been completely decimated. And live music is the last little bit where people still have to buy a ticket to get in the door. And actually, as soon as you start doing free gigs all the time, you're actually giving away the last little bit of your income.
And everyone else's as well, because you're actually saying...
You're undermining.
You're undercutting and undermining, other people.
I feel very strongly about that because of the state of the rest of the industry, which hopefully we're working on. I'm also part of the Ivers Academy, and we're fighting for the rights of songwriters and fighting to change laws, or at least highlight the situation, the plight of songwriters and the strange, archaic, ill-structured parts of the music industry. Yeah. So I feel very strongly about people not giving things away for free, actually.
Absolutely. And these archaic ways in which payments are structured and things like that, I've learned a lot through chatting to people. I spoke to Meeta Raval, who's an opera soprano. So she's with Opera North and the Welsh National Opera, and was chatting to her, this kind of, highly garlanded opera singer. But what she was saying about how she gets paid and how a lot of her colleagues get paid. And it's absolutely bizarre. You just think in this day and age, it made no sense. And she just lost everything. And so many of the people working, because of the way the PAYE or self-employment is structured, it's just no safety net. There's and no one's accountable for it.
Yeah, because more and more, with the rise of 0 hours contracts in every industry, there is a huge amount of freelancers now, compared to 10 years ago. And it's quite interesting that corporations are heading that way, where they'd rather employ freelancers and not really have any responsibility towards those people and their welfare. And then something like this happens, and a lot of those people have completely fallen through the cracks in the slightly arbitrary guidelines. It's just very interesting. I mean, a lot of reforms need to happen. And of course, they haven't done it perfectly. It was all just a scrabble to bring some sort of relief and help to as many people as possible. But it's been a very tough year for a surprising amount of people. It is,
isn't it? Yeah.
And then also to not listen to that response from the general public, to not do anything about it. It's extraordinary, actually. I mean, I know they've had a tough job, and they probably couldn't have done it perfectly, and no one could have done it perfectly. But even so, there have been points during this year which have made a lot of people so angry and so disappointed. For example, them promising the NHS workers a pay rise, or the clapping, the hollow congratulatory clapping, and then no pay rise. or indeed pay cuts, which might be coming soon. So of course they can't win, and there's no perfect way of doing it, but it's extraordinary times. Perhaps having your income taken away, necessity is the mother of invention. So I really hope people are exploring other really creative, interesting ways to make their art and make it financially viable. And I do think the music industry is one of the most endlessly creative, innovative, fluid industries that there is. So I really hope that people are thinking outside the box, and I really believe in people, especially when the belt has to get tightened, and it's like that's when you have to really think hard and be clever.
There's a lot of assumptions being made, I think, by people about other people's situations, and what they know actually is no, so many people are vulnerable. So actually, if you start to pool resources and go, well, I know a good advisor on this, or if we collectively lobbied about this, that's going to start to change stuff. And I think there's been too much where people have operated in a silo, and I think that's often down to how things are funded. People getting Arts Council funding and stuff like that. It's very much on an organisational basis, and they're very secretive about what their little pot, because they don't want to. And I think that's got to change a bit, where people go, right, we need to collaborate a bit more. Otherwise, we're very vulnerable.
I definitely agree, and I've always thought that collaboration is just the key to learning and growing and really making something that you never thought was possible. So I really, really agree with that. I'd love to see more of that happen, and I think it will.
What's your big dream next? Will you be writing again for other people? Will your music see the light of day in a public forum? What's your 2021, as you kind of said earlier, it's got a lot to answer for.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really working hard towards those things. And yes, I'm going to definitely get my album finished and start releasing singles. If we're allowed to go on the road and play live, I'm going to definitely hope to start doing that again, and actually maybe create some outdoor music events. We started doing that a bit last summer. So we're learning something all the time. But I think, I'd love to do like some more outdoor gigs next year. Maybe, create an outdoor festival that feels safe for everybody. And I always keep writing for other artists. It's what I do. It's always trundling along. Mm-hmm. It's always really important for me to do both things, to do my own artistic project and to write for other people, because they both sort of inform each other. But the artist stuff is very close to my heart, and it's all really bubbling away, and I'm kind of close to finishing the album, so that feels really exciting. So that's my main priority, to keep pushing through with that.
Well, good luck.
Thank you. But I suppose just to keep making stuff and keep learning and keep progressing, and just to keep trying to push forward despite everything, really. That's my main aim.
Fiona Bevan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really lovely to chat.
Hello, me again. Thank you so much for staying for this little end bit. I won't take much of your time, I promise. And a huge thank you to Fiona Bevan for her time and energy. I enjoyed the chat very much. We will be capturing more views on the music industry in coming episodes, including a chat with Mark David from the Music Venues Trust, the groundbreaking charity mentioned by Fiona, and it's going to be a really good conversation. The Possibility Club, more than just a podcast, it's a safe space to think aloud for people who are curious about change. If you want to join in the conversation and find some like-minded folk who are interested in where change is coming from, then join thepossibilityclub.org. Completely free. You'll find all sorts of really exciting things there, as well as a chance to have a chat about perhaps what you thought about Fiona's views on the music industry. Also, Finding Chances is a new weekly newsletter, love letter, sort of brain dump, in which I explore behind the scenes of business, culture, community and education, unpicking some of these podcast conversations with lots of other people and ideas and work that I come across through my role as CEO of Always Possible, and a curious consultant who ends up finding his way into bizarre conversations, meetings and projects. So much in my head that I just want to get it out there in the world, because some of it hopefully is useful. But sign up to Finding Chances via the link that is in the podcast notes. It'd be great to have you part of that as well. Please do tell everybody about this podcast. You know all this, don't need to keep saying it, but it's really helpful our listenership is steadily growing. Over 20 countries now, which is really exciting. I reckon there are some more people that would love to hear what Fiona, for example, has to say. And it's criminal if this is not in everybody's earpieces, earbuds, whatever we're calling them these days, on a weekly basis. So I appreciate you being advocates if you have enjoyed it. God, I'm rambling. It's been a long week. Good. So thank you for listening, and I will see you again very, very soon. The Possibility Club is an Always Possible podcast. I'm Richard Freeman for Always Possible, and is produced and edited by Chris Thorpe Tracy for Lo-Fi Arts. Lo-Fi Arts.